right, guys.
So we know each other too well. I want to talk about what happened. You've seen many talks about it. You've seen people who are far more closely related to talk about, but I want to talk about the game development side of it.
We've also seen the memes.
We've also seen the memes. So many memes.
The memes are on point. They're very al dente.
Well, like, can you zoom yourself out a little bit more? I can still see you.
Oh, you need me to zoom out.
I need you to zoom out.
Okay, hold on. How's this?
Just do that.
Is that good?
Perfect.
All right,
excellent.
fantastic. How did I get that zoom so far out?
It's perfect, by the way. If you've been watching things like Arthur's, if you've seen the Frosty talk about like following the world first, you've obviously seen like probably the what we're talking about right here and whatnot. I'm not gonna read this verbatim. Lily and I are not gonna go over that. I don't think we need to. First off, I just want to say, if it's not clear to anybody here, which I think we're all grown up to understand, is that YoshiP's mad.
You know, YoshiP is disappointed.
He's not just disappointed. He's a little bit flustered. He might be miffed.
He's definitely shaking his head.
He's felt a bit of tilt in this pinball machine.
And if for some reason you don't know what's going on, let's just bring up the dirty right now. A team that claimed world first on the newest Ultimate in Final Fantasy XIV, the Omega Protocol, referred to as TOP, got busted as cheating. Plain and simple. Now, the one thing I want to make clear here is we're not here to debate the usage of third-party tools in Final Fantasy XIV.
I am. I'm very much here for that.
Meta's here for that, but that's not our purpose today. Final Fantasy XIV has had third-party tool usage for a long time, and the devs have always walked kind of a line with that and have made it clear that they really don't want to have to define it. They have
defined it though.
Yeah.
But they have. Like they've straight up, YoshiP has stated in the past, and he's stated this before, and hilariously enough, you can find some of their links and talks about this information. By the way, I want to point out the fact that they went out of their way to, somebody was paid hourly. They punched in, and the first thing that was said to them was, I need you to go back through the live stream archives that we have on our Twitch channel or wherever we keep them stored. I need you to find these specific timestamps and get links for me when I put this message up on the board. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, YoshiP brought receipts.
So they have actually made it very clear. I'm going to point that out. I think they've 100% made it very clear. You do not use mods. That is 100% the goal. Do not use mods. That is what they've stated before. I cannot make that any clearer. Yoshi can't make that any clearer.
Of course, people do use them. And it's been a bit of a back and forth in the community about what mods are acceptable, what plugins are acceptable, where does the line get crossed.
None of them are.
Officially, none of them are acceptable.
None of them are allowed.
What the community finds acceptable, though, might be a little different than the official stance.
Which makes it wrong.
Generally, I don't think you're gonna find most raiders, I'm gonna not paraphrase. I'm going to generalize this, okay, guys? I'm going to generalize the heck out of this. I don't think you'll find that most raiders will be upset to learn some people use certain plugins, that some people might use a plugin that does callouts, or some people might use a plugin that does something else that is not really something that is done in the game. When you're doing things casually, I really think a lot of the issues you're going to start to find when it comes to the plugin and modding community is when people start using these things competitively and in world first races. If you're just like some Joe bro who's out there raiding and all you want to do is get the gear, so you're using something that might do some callouts for you to help you remember mechanics, but you don't go around bragging about it, you don't draw attention to it, you don't act like you're the divine being come down from heaven for having cleared the content, and you don't try to get any street cred for it, I don't think most people are going to take an issue with you.
What it really boils down to, since, I mean, we all, like, I've seen it in chat already, like, the don't ask, don't tell policy, that's 100% right. None are allowed, but none are looked for, so don't, out yourself. Yeah, this is exactly what Lily's saying. This is what I was saying this to even Lily earlier, because she and I have been talking all day about this.
All day.
All day. We have been, like, going back and forth, and it's really freaking funny, because before this announcement came out from YoshiP on the Lodestone, when he addressed the community, I literally sat down, looked Lily dead in the face, and I was telling her, like, I think the best thing YoshiP can honestly do is straight up come out and say, A, we're banning these individuals We're removing their, removing any items that they might have if we don't ban them, right? And anybody associated with them gets removed as well in some capacity. Arguably, it might even be better just to ban the credit card altogether to force them to have to like use a second credit card or to like change the card around. And then at that point, the best thing they could do afterwards is simply just state, we don't see this as the world first. Continue on the race. And he fucking did it, which was great. I'm really glad that he literally came out and said all these things because that's exactly what he should say. It is 100% the right case to take on this because he doesn't want to have to like literally put on he states before he thinks it's an invasion of privacy to put like a program in there that starts checking files and then immediately sends the information along to them. That's them looking at your own machine information, even if it's just to check their own files that you technically don't own, mind you, right? And he then straight up said at the end of this whole thing is that to him, they're not the world first runners, which I think is the biggest blow of it all because that's the case. I'm glad he came out and said these things. I'm glad that, this is the way it is. Mods are going to get used. Lily's 100% right on that, and I agree with her. Like I said, we were discussing this earlier. The mods that are being used, if you're somebody who's not worried about getting into a ranking system, if you're not looking at any ranking system, any competitive scene, anything that where a fair grounds equal playing field, where the only factor to the most minimal extent is player skill and player knowledge, the memory of mechanics, and the ability to execute the memory of those mechanics and the mechanics required to play with those mechanics. When we can bring it down to that lowest level, that's where mods of any kind immediately become a no zone. That's why nobody gives a shit about random Joe Bob if he's just doing Savage well beyond week 1 and he's using these mods. As long as he doesn't out himself, he's going to be fine. Nobody cares. But if you're running around thinking yourself you're great, take it for bragging rights essentially, or using that as a way to compete, to cheat in a race, then yeah, this is the point where it's exactly like you're gonna get banned, and he's right for doing it.
And YoshiP even says that in this statement. He has a line where he says that he, as a gamer, doesn't understand the fact that these people would want to use third-party plugins to basically cheat to get a world first run.
The ultimates are literally designed. The purpose of ultimates in this game are designed for one thing: to challenge your skill as a player. They're not there for better gear. They're not there to progress something in the story or to top you out so that you have an advantage in the starting of the next tier or something, or even in between. Right? It's not there for that. This is extremely a challenge. Savage, by all extensions, is nothing more than a challenge. You can't use that gear, arguably, for anything else, except for maybe Ultimate.
Then the next tier is Savage.
The next tier is Savage, yeah, right? But even at that point, Ultimates are ultimately there for their challenge. That's all they're there for. If you come in to use any cheating system, or I shouldn't say cheating system, if you come in to use third-party tools that specifically give you a mechanical advantage that other people cannot gain access to because it's not in some shape or form provided via the game, you're defeating the purpose of this content. And at that point, as he points out in his own addressing of this, what's the point of making ultimates? I want to say something really blatantly blunt if nobody has, like, if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, right? If this happens again, there's 2 outcomes we're going to see. And in fact, we may not even get to that point based on what happened here. You have outcome 1 where they start to implement their own holding and hosting of world races so that there isn't this kind of shit anymore.
Hashtag hire Frosty.
But that means it's a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of expenses for them to do something that, let's be honest, not even a fucking quarter of the community plays or even does anything with. That's a lot of expenses for something that's not going to be that great.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of, like, from the company itself. So that'd be out of their pocket almost exclusively, depending on how they run it. And even then, if nothing else, then they just have people like, you have to show us all raid members streaming at the same time. Then that's what they have to do, and then they have to have people watch it to verify it, so on and so forth. Or they do what's arguably the much easier, much more sensible thing to do, in my mind, when it comes from a game development standpoint. You stop making ultimates. We don't need to make ultimates. Ultimates are there for one purpose. If you're going to defeat the purpose of them being there, we're not going to spend our time on them because that's a lot of resources. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of stuff that they could be doing anything else with. That could be newer mechanics and mechanisms being put into the game. That could be a whole new piece of side content that they work on every expansion. That could be resources being spent in the background to do things that make your quality of life for the gameplay easier.
And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this, is I think in this announcement, YoshiP is giving us an ultimatum. YoshiP is saying, guys, if you keep doing this when we keep asking you not to,
blue content, my God.
It's just not going to happen anymore. And I really think that this is it. I think this is the final line. I know there's a lot of people who take the stance that, oh, this means they're going to, you know, ban mods and like the whole like glamour modding community is going to get destroyed and, you know, you're not going to be able to use any plugins at all. I don't think that's it. Guys, I really don't think they're going to do that.
YoshiP is a gamer. He understands that mods are a part of games. That's not something he's going to be against or he's going to like take away or turn down. It's easier. Like I said, it's much easier for them to just stop making ultimate. Why should they make ultimates?
Exactly. And I think that this is him pretty much drawing the line in the sand and saying, well, you know, actions meet consequences.
It's this whole thing that's been going on. We can see like their talk about it. Not only the fact that they had obviously illicit post-clear cutscene being put out. Somebody was able to very cleverly use that they got banned. But that somebody very clearly on the inside also dropped information about this means that it's actually very serious. Honestly, there is no doubt in my mind. You can see it literally right here. Like through this whole messaging, there's only a few times he uses red text like he's highlighting what you did wrong on your paper, right? All right. But then there is this. The use of third-party tools is strictly prohibited. That's bold red letters, baby. He's making this very bloody clear. He can't do it any more than this. And then he does it down here. A firm punishment will be given to anyone who's identified as the perpetrator for spreading from an internal source, which is a very nice way of saying they will likely suffer major consequences. Not only likely a firing, but there could be potential other consequences involved because almost all of these devs likely sign NDAs, which means that you cannot talk about this content.
There can be legal consequences. Arthas actually posted this earlier. It's on Twitter. I can link to it. But he actually posted screenshots, Japanese side, of somebody being contacted by the GMs, and they are actually removing the players' equipment, the players' achievements, the players' titles. Like, they are stripping them of these things. That's how serious they're taking this.
Rightfully so. This is exactly how they should have. This is exactly, I think, how they should approach this kind of thing. Because there really is no other way. I think that's more or less appropriate.
Yeah.
This kind of shit has to, in a way, stop.
I don't think the takeaway from all of this is going to be never use third-party tools again, right? I don't think the takeaway of this should be like completely shame people who use third-party tools into oblivion, because people are going to do what they're going to do, right? I think the takeaway from this is if you're going to compete in a competition, one that really a lot of the community comes together to watch and looks forward to, that even the developers look forward to, don't use these tools. Just don't do it. Not in a competitive environment, because it illegitimizes the content. And I think that's really the huge issue here.
Doesn't, not just that. It doesn't just illegitimize the content in of itself. It illegitimizes your own skill. If you compete using these kind of tools and then take any form of like first, second, or third, right? If you use these tools to win, you didn't really beat the content. Yes, you beat it in a physical sense, but it's not. It is quite literally. It's not the. You didn't prove anything. You cheated. You did nothing to surpass yourself. You did nothing to prove that you were actually capable of doing this content with nothing more than your own grit and human skill.
Yeah. Personally, what I'd like to see come out of this is, I'm not somebody who does ultimate content. I don't touch ultimate content. I have a hard enough time trying to do Savage with all my issues, right? But I love watching the ultimate races. I adore it. Some of my best memories of this community come from watching Ultimate races, including Dragon Songs Respite. That was amazing and so much fun and so hyped to watch and just enjoy. I don't want to see that go away. Because as amazing as the Final Fantasy XIV community is, we don't have a lot of those type of community events. This is really one of the few things the community can kind of rally behind and kind of spectate.
It's actually really cool to see how many people surge to the people who are streaming this content. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
So I really hope at the end of the day what we see come out of this is we actually see some type of official race support. I hope we see a system put in place where SE sanctions a type of world first race. And I hope it does involve streaming. Because I think at this point, I think after this situation, the one thing that we can kind of agree on as being put into the grave is I really don't think that anybody's going to accept any unstreamed clears at this point in time.
That is already what Frosty has stated. He's one of the few if you don't know who Frosty is, we've probably mentioned him a couple times. He is an individual who actually goes out of his way to watch and keep tabs on the world first race whenever it's happening for Final Fantasy. He likes to keep tabs on it. He likes to watch it. He actually helps and knows a number of the members who are racing for stuff and keeps tabs on them. And he says it takes a lot of work to do that. And a lot of times when there is offline recordings or when it's just a picture, there's not a lot of ways to validate this information, especially if your lodestone is set to private where people can't see your information, right? He himself has stated that he's not going to be following that. If you're not streaming, he's not gonna be paying attention to whether you succeed or not, is what he stated when it comes to these races.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think I don't. So if I was a game developer, and this is just again from how game developers think, I don't know if they would go that extra mile. I don't know if YoshiP wants to go that extra mile for it. They'd already go the extra mile just to make ultimates. Why should they need to go another extra mile to make sure people don't cheat at the content that they wanted to have made to challenge them? Honestly, that seems excessive. Since, not UCOB, since the ultimate weapon.
T.
No,
that's the Epic of Alexander.
Yeah, that's the Epic of Alexander. Uwu is the ultimate weapon. They have stated that is when it became, in an interview that was taking place by one of the devs that made that game, or that made that content, he literally stated he made that fight with the idea that people were going to stream it. This content that they're making has transcended just being something super hard to test people. It's transcended to, we like watching players figure it out. We enjoy that just as much as making the content. It's a part of why we make that content. That's what they're saying when the dev was talking about that. Because they enjoy. He literally made that fight with the idea that people would suddenly be figuring out and stream and people would be getting hyped as they realize, oh fuck, we have to do these mechanics a completely different way to proceed. Yeah. And you've seen fights do this multiple times. It's fun to watch for them. And they enjoy, like parents who love their children, giving them a toy, seeing as that child figures it out. That's what this is. But again, from a game dev standpoint, this really is him saying that mods are not allowed. We may just stop doing ultimates if this happens again. And we hope that this doesn't have to be another thing that we ever have to address in the future.
Yeah.
Whether it be Savage or Ultimate or even frickin' Extremes. Even though nobody really cares about Extremes, they don't want to see it.
So that's basically what's been going on. There's probably a million other people covering it a million different ways, but we really just wanted to sit down and talk about it, go over what happened, and give our perspective on it. Because Meta and I are raiders. We enjoy doing Savage. He excels at it a bit more than I do, but it's still fun and still something that we enjoy. We enjoy this content, and while we may not be doing ultimates, we enjoy watching the developers kind of push themselves to the limits to see how far they can take something that the players can still clear.